It is November 11th, 2024, and the Kremlin is calling fake news on a Washington Post article citing anonymous sources who claim that Trump and Putin held a phone call and talked about the situation in Ukraine. All of this as you also have tensions soaring with Iran, and now you have yet another claim that there was an assassination plot from Iran targeting Trump. But was there actually a plot? We'll be getting into all of the details that were released there and more. But first, just a quick note that I have a new episode of Sanctioned out now. And the timing is notable as we just received the news that Trump has chosen Elise Stefanik as his ambassador to the United Nations. Now, this, of course, comes after Trump revealed this weekend that he would not be choosing Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo as members of his cabinet in his second term. Mike Pompeo, in particular, has gotten a lot of backlash, right? He was the Secretary of State for Trump the first time around. The public, Trump supporters, the public in general really, has said, listen, keep Mike Pompeo out of your cabinet. If you want to fulfill a single campaign promise, you do not want that swamp creature around. And it seems like Trump heard it there, and then he turns right back around and he chooses Elise Stefanik to replace Nikki Haley as his UN ambassador. And she's Nikki Haley on steroids. She is arguably even worse than Haley when it comes to being a just Zionist religious zealot. And when it comes to her support of Israel, I mean, she may as well be the second Israeli ambassador at the UN. She is not so-called America first. No, she is Israel first. And it's become abundantly clear when you look at what she has said. And that's notable because in this recent episode of Sanctioned, I actually dive into a number of the different options that are being presented as possible choices for Trump's cabinet when it comes to those key foreign policy positions. So looking at his Secretary of State, his Secretary of Defense, his National Security Advisor, and the list goes on, because those are the people that when it comes to determining a Trump administration foreign policy, those are going to be the people that we are keeping an eye on. And not surprisingly, just about every single one that is being promoted by the mainstream media as someone who is in Trump's circle, who could be in his second cabinet, they all complete the Republican trifecta of being pro-Israel, anti-Iran, and anti-China. So if you want to check out my deep dive of that topic, it's available now for paid subscribers over on my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com, and on my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/rachelblevins. All right, now let's get into the video. So the Washington Post came out with this article on Sunday in which they claimed that there had already been a phone call between Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. And in that article, they specifically said that Trump advised the Russian president not to escalate the war in Ukraine and reminded him of Washington's sizable military presence in Europe. That's according to their anonymous sources. They also said the two men discussed the goal of peace on the European continent, and that Trump expressed an interest in follow-up conversations to discuss the resolutions of Ukraine's war soon. Now, these anonymous sources didn't mention how Putin responded to all of this, right? They were just presenting this as this is what Trump had to say. And of course, they were still anonymous, but it was enough to get the Washington Post to put out this article. They have not, as of today, as of Monday, issued any sort of retractions that I have seen or any sort of corrections or updates. That's even as the Kremlin has come out and denied all of this. You've got Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov saying that, quote, this absolutely does not correspond to reality. This is pure fiction. This information is simply false. He also said this was a vivid example of the quality of some information published by even some respectable outlets. Now, I appreciate the fact that he's calling the Washington Post a respectable outlet there, but yeah, it is interesting that you have this report coming out so forcefully insisting that this call did happen. Then you have the Kremlin coming out saying that this call did not happen, and they're not beating around the bush, right? They're not saying, well, maybe talks did happen. Obviously, a few days ago, we were paying attention to the reports that Trump was saying he was open to a call with Putin. Putin was saying he was open to a call with Trump. So the question of what did or didn't happen seems to be the big one here. But the Kremlin is coming out and saying, look, this did not happen. Now, I think one of the reasons why the mainstream media is especially focused on Ukraine is because, of course, a lot is at stake here when it comes to U.S. support for Kiev. I mean, the reality is that the Biden administration has made support for Ukraine its entire personality. You had Kamala Harris, who was running on zero solutions to this war. Just, we're going to keep, supporting our allies in Ukraine. And then you have Donald Trump on the opposite end of the spectrum saying that he would end this war in 24 hours, that he would even end it as president-elect. So everyone, rightfully so, is watching Trump to see what he does as president-elect. Is he going to call up Vladimir Putin? Is he going to at least attempt to bring some sort of a resolution about? And when it comes to the resolutions that have been raised by various quote unquote Trump insiders or possible cabinet picks, I have yet to see anything that Russia would actually agree to on its end. I mean, every single thing that has been proposed is some variation of a frozen conflict, right? Where sure, the US says that Kiev won't join NATO for the next 20 years, but they're still getting the freedom to arm Ukraine as much as they want to for the next 20 years. None of that is going to be accepted by Russia. From everything that I can see, I do not see Russia saying, oh yeah, sure, let's just freeze this conflict and give NATO time to rebuild Kiev, because they know what that's leading to. They've been here before. We've been through the Minsk agreements. Russia didn't just magically forget the last decade of history and dealing with the West. So I think it'll be really interesting to see if there is dialogue between the two of them. If Trump does come out as forcefully as the Washington Post claimed that he did, and if he tries to threaten Putin and claim, oh, we have a sizable military presence in Europe, Putin's going to be like, yeah, I'm well aware. I'm fighting them in the Donbass right now, right? It's like, I get that Trump has had a bit of a break. He's been away for 4 years and hasn't been in office, but Putin's been here the entire time. He's well aware of everything that the West has, of all of their involvement in Ukraine. He's way more aware of it than someone like Donald Trump is. So we'll see what transpires there. I did think it was interesting, though, that the Kremlin was so forcefully against this report and that the Washington Post was so vocal about it. So I'm very curious to see kind of what the next step is here. If we hear from Trump himself, and at the rate we're going with this news cycle, I fully expect him to make a statement by the time I finally published this video. But anyways, let's get on to the rest of what we're looking at here, as we also have tensions ongoing between the US and Iran very openly. And now those tensions are dragging in one Donald Trump. As you may have seen, the Department of Justice announced charges on Friday against an Iranian national and 2 Americans for alleged involvement in a murder for hire plot to assassinate Trump. As the AP noted, investigators were told of the plan to kill Trump by Farhad Shakari, an accused Iranian government asset who spent time in American prisons for robbery and who authorities say maintains a network of criminal associates enlisted by Tehran for surveillance and murder for hire plots. Now, the interesting part here is that in this criminal complaint, the FBI literally says that all of the information that they got from this guy, Farhad Shakari, was given to them voluntarily through telephone interviews while this guy was, I guess, somewhere in Iran. So they're literally saying that they talked to him on the phone multiple times, that he just told them everything, right? He told them that he was told by someone in Iran, specifically someone with the IRGC, that he needed to come up with some sort of plot to assassinate Trump. But here's the thing. We don't know if he came up with an actual plan. We just know that he said he was told to do so. And now he's facing charges of money laundering, conspiracy to provide material support for a terrorist group, and murder for hire. And he's considered to be at large in Iran. Now, the indictment also implicated 2 American citizens who are accused of helping Tehran to track down a U.S. citizen of Iranian origin. Again, still no proof of an actual plot that that was put together to assassinate Trump. Notably, Iran has been quick to deny the claims that it was trying to assassinate Trump, with the spokesman for the Iranian Foreign Ministry calling the accusations completely baseless and saying that, quote, such claims at this juncture are a malicious conspiracy orchestrated by Zionist and anti-Iranian circles aimed at further complicating the issues between the US and Iran. And he makes an important point there because, as we know, it's not like Trump has had a friendly relationship with Iran in the past. I mean, during his first term, he pulled the US out of the Iran nuclear deal just because he didn't like it, that it was something from the Obama administration. And then on top of that, he assassinated Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, who was literally at the forefront of the fight against ISIS. So it's not as though Iran is excited to see someone like Donald Trump coming back to power, but it is notable to me that while you haven't exactly seen Trump going around on the campaign trail claiming that he wants peace with Iran, he has said that he wants peace in the Middle East. Now, I'll believe that the day that he holds Israel accountable for literally anything. However, it is notable that they're basically bringing Trump back to power at a time where they're claiming that there was not just one assassination plot against him, but there were at least two. Because as reports have also noted, back in August, a Pakistani man was charged with plotting the assassination of both Trump and other US politicians. Federal prosecutors notably didn't mention Trump by name in the indictment, but they did say that the man traveled to New York in April to recruit hitmen to carry out his scheme, but was foiled when one of the people approached, reported him to the FBI, and then became an informant. And again, the strange part here is that you have yet another case where there was this guy who was apparently going around saying that someone in Iran told him that he had to finalize a plan for an assassination plot against Trump. But never do we hear of any actual plan, any actual steps taken to carry out a plan to assassinate Trump coming from Iran directly or anything like that. But that hasn't stopped the mainstream media from running with the story that, oh, Iran is actively trying to assassinate Trump. Therefore, when Trump gets into office in January, he's not looking too kindly on Iran. So what is Iran saying about all of this? Well, we did hear from a few Iranian officials over the weekend at a ceremony that was held in remembrance of Hezbollah Secretary General Syed Hassan Nasrallah. That's where Iran's current foreign minister spoke and warned that, quote, the world should know that if the war expands, its detrimental effects will not be confined to West Asia. And he's not wrong. I mean, the US is acting like right now that they have no problem supporting an ongoing genocide of the Palestinians through their support for the Israelis. At the same time, the US doesn't care if there's this, back and forth battle between Israel and Iran where they're carrying out attacks against each other and it's escalating every single time. The US is just sitting back like, it doesn't really affect us. At least it doesn't right now. But that's not to say that this regional conflict will not continue to escalate, that it won't affect oil prices around the world at the very least, right? Things that the US cares about because it clearly does not care about civilian lives, and that it won't turn into a broader conflict that will lead us to World War III, because Trump is coming into this thinking like he's still back in 2016, right? Like the world is still where it was even back in 2020, say 4 years ago. But the reality is that the world is very, very different now. A lot of that's because of the Trump administration and because of the Biden administration. And even though both have taken steps to isolate Iran from the rest of the world, the exact opposite has happened. In the same way that the Biden administration took steps to isolate Russia from the world. And guess what? The Trump administration did too, right? The Trump administration enacted sanctions on Russia. It removed the US from a key nuclear treaty with Russia. It openly armed Ukraine, and yet Trump wants to come in and talk about peace in Ukraine and end to the war there and peace in the Middle East. I'm just not buying it. But I do think it's important to note that Iran is not in the same position it was back in 2020. It has strengthened its alliances with a number of key countries, including Russia and China, along with the fact that Iran is now a member of the BRICS alliance. And it's interesting because when you look back at the legacy of Trump's first term, we are reminded that he let Israel get away with whatever it wanted in the region. He basically gave them whatever they wanted presented on a silver platter, short of a full-on genocide of the Palestinians, and direct war with Iran. But thanks to the Biden administration, we're now at that point. Trump is coming into office at an incredibly volatile time, not just for the region, but for the entire world. With the Wall Street Journal claiming it's because of those alleged Iranian plans to assassinate Trump that the former president is coming back to office ready to take on Tehran. So they're already trying to set Trump up for a direct conflict with Iran. But if he would just pay attention to what Iranian officials are actively saying, then he would see that Tehran's current vice president for strategic affairs and former foreign minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, noted that Israel and the US must accept that as long as the rights of the Palestinian people are not respected, they will not see peace. Because this genocide is not ending with Genocide Joe, right? Israel is going to continue on. It's expected that they will continue on with their massacres of Palestinians and Lebanese civilians as well. And at the same time, you've got Iran going, look, we're not going to stop Hezbollah from continuing on and not just border clashes, but its ongoing war with Israel. We're not going to stop Ansar Allah in Yemen from its blockade of Israel-linked ships in the Red Sea, not as long as there is an all-out genocide going on and you're talking about these groups that are the only resistance to Israel whatsoever in the region. And while I don't expect Trump to be listening to Iranian officials and what they're saying, I do know that he's listening to Netanyahu and what he's saying, as the Israeli prime minister is openly bragging that he has spoken to Trump 3 times since the US election less than 1 week ago, and he said that they see eye to eye on the Iranian threat. So Trump may not be talking to Putin, but he is certainly talking to Netanyahu. And when it comes to his first official cabinet member, aside from his chief of staff, the fact that he chose Elise Stefanik to be UN ambassador, so loud and proud about the fact that he is going to be Israel first, America last in his second term, this does not bode well for him. And I know we haven't seen the majority of his cabinet picks. There could be some surprises in there. A lot of that still remains to be seen. But the fact that he would choose Elise Stefanik tells me that even though we live in a very different world today than we did back in 2020 or 2016, Trump is still the same Trump. He is still serving the same masters, and the results are going to be the same. And history is not going to look kindly on the US and its open support of genocide as a result, and that is something everyone should be talking about. If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment, and as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. That's where you can find new episodes of my exclusive weekly series for paid subscribers called Sanctioned. You can also check out Sanctioned over on my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/rachelblevins. That's where you can participate in regular polls that contribute to my work, and you can join the community there. As always, thank y'all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.